Ancient builders lifted stones heavier than trucks with a precision that defies logic. These megalithic monuments stand as a silent challenge to our modern understanding of engineering. By the end of this journey, you will discover the lost methods that allowed our ancestors to achieve the impossible. How did they move colossal rocks across miles of rugged terrain? And what forgotten knowledge allowed them to align massive structures with the stars themselves? What does it truly mean to build something that lasts for thousands of years? These ancient structures rise from every corner of our world, a silent testament to a shared human drive to build for the ages. From the sun-baked plains of Egypt, where the Great Pyramid's 2 million stone blocks reach for the sky, to the misty fields of Britain, where the sarsen stones of Stonehenge form a perfect ring, the scale is almost beyond comprehension. We find them in the forgotten highlands of Peru, where stones fit together with a seamlessness that defies a blade's edge, and across the islands of the Pacific, where great heads stand guard over distant shores. These are not random piles of rock. They are sophisticated monuments constructed with blocks that can weigh more than a fully loaded cargo truck, each one quarried, shaped, and placed with an intention we are still struggling to grasp. How could cultures separated by oceans and millennia, all lacking modern machinery, achieve such staggering feats of engineering? The stones themselves hold the clues, whispering of a lost knowledge that allowed our ancestors to manipulate mass and matter in ways that still confound us today. This fundamental question of how they moved the immovable sets the stage for an even deeper mystery, one that lies in the very first step of their monumental work. The stones were not merely placed, they were perfectly positioned. The Great Pyramid of Giza is aligned to the 4 cardinal directions with an error margin of just 1/15 of a single degree. This is not a rough approximation. It is a level of precision that would challenge modern engineers even with our advanced tools and satellite technology. Across the world, in the ancient tomb of Newgrange in Ireland, a narrow passageway was engineered so that for just a few minutes at dawn on the winter solstice, a beam of sunlight would pierce the inner chamber, illuminating a space that had been dark for a full year. How was this possible? How could ancient cultures, separated by thousands of miles and years, achieve such breathtaking astronomical accuracy without lasers, without GPS, without even a basic magnetic compass as we know it? The answer lies not in complex machinery, but in a profound understanding of the natural world. Archaeologists and historians point to the use of simple yet brilliant surveying techniques. They used the stars as a fixed clock in the sky, tracking the consistent paths of certain constellations. They used the sun's shadows, perhaps by placing a central pole and marking the arc of its shadow throughout the day to find true north and south. With little more than ropes, wooden pegs, and an intimate knowledge of geometry, they could lay out perfect right angles and massive circles on the ground. This mathematical consistency is what truly stuns researchers. The same geometric principles, the same Pythagorean triangles, and the same understanding of pi appear in monuments from Egypt to Britain to the Americas. This cannot be a coincidence. It points to a shared or independently discovered deep knowledge of the universe's mathematical language. This precision was not for show. It was fundamental to their worldview, connecting their monumental architecture to the cycles of the heavens. And if they could map the stars onto the earth with such exactness, it makes you wonder what other complex methods they had mastered. But before a single stone could be moved, it first had to be freed from the earth itself. The quarries where this work began were landscapes of immense ambition. Here, workers confronted solid bedrock, tasked with extracting blocks that could weigh as much as 50 full-grown elephants. Without power tools or explosives, they relied on a deep understanding of the stone's own properties. One widely accepted method involved the clever use of wood and water. Workers would chisel a line of holes along a predetermined fracture line and drive dry wooden wedges into them. Then they would soak these wedges with water. As the wood expanded with tremendous, relentless force, it would create a clean fracture, splitting the granite or limestone with a precision that mimicked modern machinery. At a place like Baalbek in Lebanon, the evidence of this struggle is frozen in time. The site holds a single stone, known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, still nestled in its quarry bed. It is one of the largest monoliths ever cut by human hands, estimated to weigh well over 1,000 tons. Just standing before it is a humbling experience, raising immediate questions. How many individuals did it take to begin prying such a giant from its cradle of rock? The logistical challenge of organizing such a workforce, of feeding and housing them, is as staggering as the stone itself. The sheer craftsmanship evident in the clean, sharp angles of these quarried blocks points to generations of specialized knowledge, a tradition of stoneworking passed down and refined over centuries. And this leads to the next, even more baffling question. Once you have successfully quarried a 1,000-ton block, how do you possibly begin to move it? The challenge of moving these stones is a puzzle of physics on an epic scale. How do you transport a 50-ton block, a weight equivalent to a herd of elephants, across miles of uneven ground without the wheel or the beast of burden? The most widely accepted theory involves a combination of brute force and brilliant simplicity. Imagine a massive sledge, a platform of sturdy timber carrying the stone. Beneath it, a path is prepared not with pavement but with a slick surface of wet clay or mud. Teams of workers, perhaps hundreds strong, pull on ropes, inching the colossal load forward. Rollers made from logs were likely placed underneath, constantly being moved from the back to the front in a rhythmic, coordinated effort. This method turns an impossible drag into a manageable, albeit back-breaking, slide. Yet, some ancient accounts and modern experiments suggest even more ingenious solutions. There are persistent stories, for instance, of cultures using sound or specific vibrations to somehow reduce friction or make the stones themselves easier to move, a concept that pushes the boundaries of our current understanding of physics. A fascinating case study emerges on the remote Easter Island. Here, local oral history and archaeological experimentation suggest the iconic Moai statues, some weighing over 80 tons, were not dragged at all. Instead, they were rocked from side to side, effectively walked into position by teams using a careful system of ropes. This method would have required an incredible degree of coordination and a deep, intuitive understanding of balance and momentum. Modern engineers who have attempted to replicate these ancient transports often express a profound respect for the logistics involved. The sheer number of people required, the management of food and water, and the precise communication needed to prevent catastrophic accidents present a nightmare of organization that rivals the physical effort. This was not random pulling. It was a carefully choreographed dance of human ingenuity against the unyielding forces of gravity and friction. They found a way to make the impossible possible. But moving the stone was only half the battle. Once it arrived at the sacred site, an even more delicate operation began. How do you lift a multi-ton block and place it with such care that it stands for millennia? The final act of construction presents a spectacle of coordination that seems to defy human limitation. Teams of workers faced the ultimate challenge, hoisting stones weighing dozens of tons to dizzying heights and fitting them together with impossible precision. To lift these colossal blocks, ancient engineers employed simple machines on a grand scale. One of the most enduring theories involves the construction of massive earthen ramps. These ramps, built from mud, brick, and rubble, would have provided a sloping pathway for workers to drag stones upward, course by course, gradually building a pyramid or raising a temple wall. Yet, the logistics are staggering. The ramp for the Great Pyramid alone would have required almost as much material as the pyramid itself, a monumental undertaking that speaks to an almost unimaginable collective will. For more delicate placements, like setting a massive lintel stone atop two uprights, they likely turned to the power of levers and counterweights, using sturdy wooden beams as levers and bags of sand or smaller stones as counterweights. A small team could pivot a multi-ton block upward in tiny, controlled increments. The sound must have been a symphony of creaking timber and taut ropes, a testament to human patience and an intuitive grasp of physics. We see the breathtaking results in places like the treasury of Atreus in Mycenae, where immense stones form a corbelled arch, each layer cantilevering inward until they meet at the peak, a stable, gravity-defying structure built without a single keystone. High in the Andes, the builders of Machu Picchu demonstrated a different kind of genius. There, stones of irregular, polygonal shapes were painstakingly carved to fit together like a three-dimensional puzzle, interlocking so perfectly that neither mortar nor a slip of paper can pass between them. This technique, known as ashlar masonry, created structures so resilient they have withstood centuries of earthquakes that have toppled modern buildings nearby. When contemporary engineers try to replicate these feats using only the tools believed to be available, they often find the process far more difficult and time-consuming than expected. This gap between our modern attempts and their ancient successes hints at a nuanced, hands-on knowledge that was never written down, a tactile wisdom passed from master to apprentice and now lost to time. It forces us to ask, if their methods of lifting and fitting were so advanced, what must their tools have been like to allow for such perfect execution? The tools left behind tell a story that is both simple and deeply perplexing. In the workshops near the Great Pyramids, archaeologists have found tools made of copper, a soft metal by today's standards. With these simple chisels and saws, workers are believed to have pounded and abraded their way through relatively soft limestone. But then we encounter the hard stone, the granite and diorite used for sarcophagi and the most sacred spaces. The mystery deepens when we look at the evidence left on the stone itself. On granite blocks and basalt statues, we find clean, precise drill holes and saw marks that look as if they were made by a modern machine. The spiral grooves inside some drill cores are so regular and deep that they suggest a drill bit that was not just twisted by hand, but powered with a consistent, tremendous force, perhaps using a weighted bow mechanism that allowed for sustained, efficient cutting. The puzzle for metallurgists is profound. Copper is too soft to efficiently cut granite. Even bronze, a stronger alloy, would have dulled almost immediately against such resilient stone. So what were they using? Some researchers point to the possibility of abrasive powders. By using a copper saw with a slurry of water and a harder substance like quartz, sand, or emery, the tool itself becomes merely a delivery system. The hard abrasive particles do the actual cutting, slowly grinding through the rock over countless patient hours. This explains the mechanics, but it does not fully explain the breathtaking precision. Inside the Serapeum of Saqqara, for instance, are massive granite boxes weighing over 70 tons each. Their surfaces are flawlessly flat, and their corners are perfect 90-degree angles with an accuracy measured in fractions of a millimeter. To achieve this with simple copper tools and sand slurry would require not just skill, but an almost supernatural level of control and measurement. It suggests a masterful understanding of geometry and a suite of specialized, perhaps even lost, tools for verification and finishing. This level of toolcraft was not an isolated phenomenon. We see it in the Andes, where stones were shaped with such intricate care that they locked together without mortar, and in other ancient sites where the evidence points to methods we are still struggling to replicate. The tools, or the lack of tools that fully explain the work, point to a system of knowledge that was far more developed than we often assume. It was a system where the mastery of simple materials was combined with a profound understanding of physics and geometry, allowing them to achieve results that continue to challenge our historical timeline. These geometric patterns are far more than decorative. They form the invisible skeleton of the structure, a mathematical code that ensured both stability and symbolic meaning. Look at the Parthenon in Greece. Its facade is a masterclass in proportion, its dimensions consistently reflecting the golden ratio, a special number approximately equal to 1.618. This ratio is found throughout nature, from the spiral of a nautilus shell to the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower. By embedding it into their architecture, the builders created a visual harmony that feels instinctively right to the human eye, a building that appears perfectly balanced because its very blueprint echoes the patterns of the natural world. This was not a happy accident. Modern mathematicians who have analyzed these layouts often express sheer astonishment at the consistency. They point out that the probability of these complex ratios and Pythagorean triples appearing by random chance across so many different sites is vanishingly small. This was deliberate, sophisticated knowledge. At Chichen Itza, the Great Step Pyramid known as El Castillo is a massive astronomical calendar made of stone. Its 4 stairways have 91 steps each, which, added to the shared platform at the top, gives 365 steps, one for each day of the solar year. During the equinoxes, the play of light and shadow creates the illusion of a serpent slithering down the staircase, a direct fusion of geometry, astronomy, and cultural belief. The numbers were not just for counting. They told stories, tracked time, and connected the Earth to the cosmos. This mathematical backbone was the true secret to their longevity. A structure built on perfect proportions distributes weight and withstands environmental stress with an efficiency that random construction could never achieve. It is the reason these monuments have endured for millennia while modern buildings sometimes falter after mere decades. The stones were placed according to a grand, numerical design, a hidden language of form and function that we are only now beginning to fully decipher. And if their understanding of mathematics was this profound, it forces us to reconsider the very nature of their society. What kind of culture possessed this level of abstract thought, and how did they manage to organize such immense projects without the written word as we know it? Beyond the tools and the ramps lies a theory that challenges our very understanding of physics. Legends from cultures around the world speak of a time when stones were moved not by brute force but by sound. Ancient texts and oral histories describe priests or wise ones using chants, specific frequencies, or the music of certain instruments to make massive blocks lose their weight, becoming light enough to be guided into place by hand. This idea of acoustic levitation seems to belong to the realm of myth, yet modern science is beginning to explore its edges, finding that the line between legend and potential reality might be thinner than we ever assumed. One of the most compelling places to consider this is the Hypogeum of Malta, an underground labyrinth carved from solid limestone over 5,000 years ago. Within its depths lies a chamber known as the Oracle Room. When a person speaks in a deep, resonant tone within this space, the sound does not just echo. It amplifies, vibrating through the entire chamber and even through the stone floor you stand on. the frequency created is a powerful, low hum that can be felt in your bones. Archaeoacoustics researchers have studied this phenomenon, suggesting that such spaces were not accidental. They were designed to harness specific sound frequencies. What if this knowledge of resonance was not just for ceremony but for construction? The theory proposes that if you could match the resonant frequency of a stone, you could, in essence, make it vibrate in such a way that it effectively reduces its own friction with the ground, making it vastly easier to move. Physicists working with cymatics, the study of visible sound, have shown that sound waves can organize matter into intricate patterns. In laboratory experiments, high-amplitude sound waves have been used to levitate small droplets of water and even solid particles. While we are far from levitating a 50-ton block, the principle is the same. Resonance is a powerful force. If you have ever seen a singer shatter a wine glass by hitting the exact right note, you have witnessed the transformative power of a matched frequency. The glass does not break from volume, but from the precise, amplified vibration that overwhelms its structure. Now, consider the reverse. Could a sustained, specific resonant frequency be used not to break a material, but to temporarily alter its relationship with gravity and friction? This is the tantalizing question at the heart of the acoustic theory. Of course, this remains a highly speculative and controversial idea within mainstream archaeology. There is no definitive proof that ancient builders used sonic technology, yet the persistent legends, combined with the peculiar acoustic properties of certain sacred sites, make it a mystery that is difficult to dismiss entirely. It invites us to expand our perspective on ancient innovation. Perhaps their greatest tools were not made of copper or stone, but were invisible forces they had learned to conduct and command. This leads us to another tangible mystery, one locked in the very material of the stones they chose. What secrets does the rock itself hold, and why have these specific materials endured for thousands of years while our modern concrete crumbles after a mere century? The very stones these monuments are built from hold secrets that challenge our most basic assumptions. While we picture ancient builders carving blocks from quarries, a compelling theory suggests something far more sophisticated was at work. This is the Geopolymer Theory, the idea that some of these massive stones were not quarried at all, but were instead cast in place, much like modern concrete. Proponents of this idea point to the uncanny consistency in certain blocks, a lack of visible tool marks, and the presence of microscopic bubbles and organic fibers that would not be found in natural rock. It implies that these cultures had mastered a form of chemistry, creating an artificial stone that was perfectly tailored for their construction needs. This was not primitive concrete, but a high-tech material science that produced a substance more durable than what we often use today. The implications are staggering. It would mean that moving 50-ton blocks was sometimes unnecessary. Instead, workers would have transported bags of powdered limestone and special alkaline binders, mixing them with water on site to pour their history into solid form. This theory remains controversial, but it forces us to reconsider the very definition of stone and the ingenuity of those who worked with it. Another profound material mystery can be found in the vitrified forts of Scotland. Here, the tops of ancient stone walls appear to have been melted and fused together by some form of immense heat. Geologists who have studied these sites confirm that the rock has been vitrified, a process that requires temperatures exceeding 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hotter than a typical wood fire. The question of how and why this was achieved has puzzled researchers for generations. Was it the result of a catastrophic siege fire so intense it melted granite? Or was it an intentional, controlled process meant to strengthen the walls, a forgotten method of fortification that turned stone into a single, unbreakable unit? The effort required to generate and sustain such heat is immense, pointing to a deliberate and advanced understanding of pyrotechnology. Material scientists who analyze these ancient stones often express a deep respect for their longevity. They note that the specific types of granite, limestone, and basalt chosen were not just randomly available. They were selected for their crystalline structure, their density, and their resistance to erosion. This was a deep, localized knowledge of geology. These stones interact with their environment in a symbiotic relationship, expanding and contracting with temperature changes in a way that maintains their integrity over centuries. Compare this to modern concrete, which we know has a lifespan of roughly 100 years before it begins to significantly degrade. The Roman Pantheon, with its massive unreinforced concrete dome, has stood for nearly 2,000 years, while many of our own structures require constant repair. The ancients were not just builders, they were master material scientists. They understood the soul of the rock they worked with, choosing not for convenience but for eternity. This sophisticated selection and potential creation of building materials reveals a hidden layer of their genius, one rooted in a profound connection to the natural world and its resources. It makes you wonder what other sustainable practices they employed, and how their relationship with the environment allowed them to achieve such timeless results. The silent, unmoving mass of a megalithic stone presents a paradox of weight and motion. Yet some researchers propose that the solution to this ancient puzzle was not found on solid ground, but in the fluid dynamics of water itself. Imagine the backbreaking work of dragging a stone block across miles of dry land. Now picture that same block resting on a wooden barge, floating serenely along a purpose-built canal. This is the core of the hydraulic hypothesis. The principle is one of brilliant simplicity. By floating a stone, you effectively neutralize its crushing weight, trading the immense force needed for dragging with the manageable effort of guiding a vessel through water. The concept of using water channels to transport massive stones is not just a modern guess. For the Great Pyramid, some Egyptologists suggest that builders cleverly diverted the annual floodwaters of the Nile, creating a network of canals that brought barges loaded with limestone blocks right to the base of the plateau. This would turn a logistical nightmare into an elegant, seasonal operation, harnessing a natural cycle to serve a monumental ambition. Evidence for such water-based engineering is not confined to Egypt. At the Olmec site of La Venta in Mesoamerica, archaeologists have uncovered sophisticated hydraulic systems, including drains and channels, in close proximity to the colossal stone heads for which the culture is famous. While the exact purpose is debated, their presence demonstrates an advanced understanding of controlling water flow, a knowledge that could easily have been applied to the challenge of moving their heaviest monuments. Modern engineers who analyze these proposals often focus on the practicalities. Creating and maintaining a navigable canal capable of supporting such heavy cargo requires precise surveying and constant maintenance. The terrain itself presents a major challenge. In hilly or mountainous regions, creating a level waterway would have been incredibly difficult, though not impossible with a system of locks or dams. The hydraulic method would have been most effective in flat, river-rich environments, suggesting that ancient builders were not using a single, universal technique, but rather adapting their methods masterfully to the local landscape. This fluid approach to a solid problem reveals a deep-seated ingenuity. It shows a culture that did not fight nature with brute force alone, but learned to work with its elements, using the buoyant power of water to achieve what muscle alone could not. This adaptability in their earthly engineering mirrors a similar sophistication in their celestial observations, raising a profound question. If they could so skillfully manipulate the waterways of the Earth, how precisely were they also mapping the pathways of the stars? The stones were not just aligned with the earth, but with the cosmos itself. This celestial connection was engineered into the very bones of these monuments, transforming them into colossal calendars and observatories of stone. At Choco Canyon in the American Southwest, a stunning example of this precision exists. On a high cliff face, a spiral petroglyph is carved into the rock. For most of the year, it is simply a beautiful design, but on the summer solstice, a dagger of sunlight pierces through a slit in the rock overhead, striking directly through the center of the spiral. As the days pass, the light dagger moves, tracing a path that marks the sun's journey toward the equinox. This was not a vague, symbolic gesture. It was a precise, repeatable astronomical instrument, a way to track the seasons and mark the passage of time with unerring accuracy. Astronomers who study these ancient alignments often express a professional admiration for the observational skills required. One noted that to achieve such exactness, the builders needed to track the slow, subtle movements of celestial bodies over generations, compiling a database of knowledge that was then encoded into architecture. This was a long-term scientific project spanning centuries. The Great Pyramid shafts, for instance, are aligned with specific stars like Orion's belt, which held deep significance in Egyptian cosmology. The entire structure serves as a permanent clock, its sides casting shadows that can be used to pinpoint the solstices and equinoxes. This astronomical integration was profoundly practical. It dictated the timing of agricultural cycles, religious ceremonies, and likely even the construction schedule itself. Building during specific seasons, when the stars were in a favorable position or when daylight was longest, would have been crucial for managing such massive projects. The depth of this celestial knowledge points to a holistic engineering philosophy, one where understanding the heavens was as fundamental to construction as understanding leverage or geometry. It reveals a world view where the earthly and the cosmic were intimately linked, a perspective that guided every aspect of their monumental work. The silent endurance of these monuments points to a system of knowledge far more robust than any single blueprint. Without the widespread use of written manuals, how did these complex engineering principles survive for centuries, passed from one generation to the next with such fidelity? The answer lies in the living library of human tradition. In cultures from the Celtic Druids to the Inca master builders, knowledge was not stored on parchment but in people. It was safeguarded by specialized guilds or priestly classes, individuals who dedicated their lives to mastering and protecting the sacred techniques of their craft. This was a world of rigorous apprenticeships where a young initiate would spend decades working alongside a master, learning not just the how but the why. They learned to feel the grain of the stone, to listen for the telltale sound of a correct fracture, and to understand the subtle shifts in the stars. This was knowledge earned through doing, a tactile wisdom that could never be fully captured in words alone. We see echoes of this structured learning in the artifacts they left behind. While the Inca had no alphabetic writing, they used the quipu, a complex system of knotted cords that likely recorded numerical data, genealogies, and even historical narratives. For an engineer coordinating a massive project, such a device could have been a vital administrative tool, a way to track labor, materials, and timelines. In ancient Egypt, the House of Life was an institution attached to major temples, part library, part university, and part workshop. Here, scribes and priests would have preserved technical knowledge concerning mathematics, astronomy, and architecture. This was not public information. It was closely guarded, specialized knowledge that conferred power and ensured that only the properly trained could undertake the sacred duty of raising a temple or a pyramid. This system of oral transmission and hands-on training created an unbroken chain of expertise. A master stonemason would teach his most trusted apprentice the precise way to dress a granite block to achieve that perfect, paper-thin joint. That apprentice, in turn, would one day become a master and pass the exact same technique forward. This generational relay race ensured a remarkable consistency in method and quality across vast stretches of time. The geometric ratios we find repeated across continents are a testament to this. The knowledge was so deeply ingrained in the culture's practice that it could survive political upheaval, drought, and even the gradual decline of the civilization itself, embedded in the very stones they left behind. The sheer scale of these projects, however, forces us to look beyond the master craftsmen. It demands we consider the immense social machine that had to be built to support them. How did these early societies mobilize thousands of workers, feed them, and house them for decades, all while maintaining the precise organization needed to achieve an architectural vision that would not be completed within a single lifetime? Behind every stone placed with impossible precision was a community united by a shared vision. These were not projects built by slaves under the lash, as outdated stories sometimes suggest, but complex social endeavors that drew upon the collective spirit of an entire culture. Anthropologists studying these sites point to evidence of large, well-organized workforces who were likely motivated by deep religious belief, social duty, or the promise of a shared legacy. They were farmers, herders, and artisans who came together during seasonal breaks, transforming their collective labor into a permanent mark on the world. The sheer scale of mobilization is staggering. To build the Great Pyramid, historians estimate a rotating workforce of thousands, all of whom needed to be fed, housed, and coordinated with a precision that rivals any modern project. This was a society that had mastered the art of large-scale organization without a single computer or spreadsheet. The logistical genius required to supply enough food and water for these workers alone is a monumental achievement in its own right. Insights from anthropologists reveal that such projects could strengthen social cohesion, creating a powerful shared identity and reinforcing the leadership that made such coordination possible. On Easter Island, the driving force behind the Moai statues was deeply cultural. Each massive figure represented a revered ancestor, and the act of carving and erecting them was a sacred duty that connected the living community to their past and to the spiritual world. This was not merely construction, it was an act of faith and identity. The human element here is a powerful reminder that the greatest engineering marvels are not just about levers and ramps. They are testaments to what people can achieve when they are united by a common purpose. This collective will, this ability to organize on a grand scale, becomes the invisible mortar that holds these ancient sites together. It is a force that allowed these building techniques to spread across continents, adapted by diverse cultures who each found their own way to move mountains. From the high Andes to the shores of the Aegean Sea, a silent architectural conversation seems to have taken place. The same sophisticated stone fitting technique appears in the polygonal walls of Mycenaean Greece and the breathtaking citadel of Machu Picchu in Peru. In both places, massive stones of irregular, multifaceted shapes were carved to interlock with their neighbors, creating a resilient jigsaw puzzle wall that needed no mortar. This identical solution, born in cultures separated by vast oceans and thousands of years, presents a profound riddle for historians. Did this knowledge travel across the globe through some lost connection? Or did brilliant minds on different continents simply arrive at the same optimal answer by confronting the same physical challenges? This is the core of the great debate between diffusion and convergent evolution. Experts who favor diffusion suggest that a core set of advanced building knowledge may have been carried by ancient seafarers, spreading these revolutionary techniques along forgotten trade routes. Others argue more compellingly for independent innovation, pointing out that when you face the problem of building an earthquake-resistant structure without modern materials, the logic of physics itself guides you toward a polygonal design. The interlocking blocks, with their numerous contact points, distribute seismic energy far more effectively than straight, rectangular walls, which are prone to toppling. It seems that brilliant engineers working in complete isolation discovered the same universal principles of stability and design, a testament to the incredible power of human ingenuity when faced with a common problem. This global pattern of parallel discovery hints at a deeper truth, that the secrets of working with stone and force were not a single culture's hidden treasure, but a universal language waiting to be decoded by anyone who looked closely enough at the world. The very pervasiveness of these methods, however, inevitably leads us toward more controversial explanations for their origin. These lingering mysteries have inevitably given rise to more speculative explanations. When conventional archaeology struggles to fully explain the how and why, other theories emerge to fill the void. Some point to the possibility of a lost advanced civilization, a culture whose technological achievements were wiped clean by some ancient cataclysm, leaving only their most durable structures behind. Others look to the stars, suggesting that knowledge of advanced engineering was delivered from beyond our world. These ideas capture the public imagination, but how do they stand up to scrutiny? Proponents of these alternative views often highlight sites that seem to defy conventional timelines. Take the ruins of Puma Punku in Bolivia. Here, stone blocks of andesite and granite are cut with geometric precision, featuring razor-sharp edges, perfect right angles, and intricate channels that look as if they were made by industrial machinery. The consistency and complexity of these cuts are so striking that some researchers argue they surpass the capabilities of the known tools from that era. One archaeologist skeptical of these more radical ideas counters, "We must be careful not to underestimate the ingenuity of ancient peoples. The absence of evidence for a specific tool is not evidence of its absence. It simply means we have not found it yet, or we have not fully understood the sophisticated methods they did possess." These debates are not just academic. They shape how the public perceives our ancient past, often pitting a sense of wonder against a demand for empirical proof. The very existence of these controversies, however, serves a crucial purpose. It forces us to acknowledge the genuine limits of our current understanding and reminds us that history is not a closed book, but a story we are still learning to read. This honest confrontation with the unknown, rather than a rush to fantastical conclusions, is what truly opens the door to more grounded, yet equally astonishing, archaeological discoveries waiting to be made. The ground holds the most honest testimony. At the base of the Great Pyramid, archaeologists have uncovered not just the polished casing stones, but the sprawling ruins of the workers' settlement. Here, they found the bones of cattle from distant farms, evidence of a massive, state-organized supply chain that fed thousands. They uncovered bakeries capable of producing bread on an industrial scale, and medical facilities where skeletons show healed fractures, proof of a community that cared for its injured. This is not the story of a slave-driven workforce, but of a highly organized, skilled labor force that turned a pharaoh's vision into a mountain of stone. These camps are the tangible evidence of the social machine required for such an undertaking, revealing a society capable of logistical planning that rivals our own. Further east at Göbekli Tepe, a site that continues to rewrite our understanding of prehistory, the evidence is even more profound. This complex of carved stone pillars arranged in circles was built over 11,000 years ago, a time when humans were supposedly simple hunter-gatherers. The scale and sophistication of the carvings, the transportation of multi-ton pillars from local quarries, all point to a level of social organization and symbolic thought that we never knew existed in that era. The very existence of Göbekli Tepe forces a fundamental question. Did the desire to build monumental structures come first, actually catalyzing the development of agriculture and settled society to support the builders? It is a complete inversion of what we thought we knew about the rise of civilization. Field archaeologists piece together these stories fragment by fragment. They study the microscopic wear patterns on a copper chisel found in a workshop to understand if it was used on soft limestone or with an abrasive slurry to cut harder granite. They map the post holes of a temporary ramp, reconstructing its incline and capacity. Every pottery shard, every discarded tool, every fossilized seed in an ancient trash pit adds a pixel to the larger picture. Yet for every answer unearthed, new questions emerge. How were the massive capstones at Newgrange in Ireland, each weighing over 5 tons, lifted to the top of the mound without leaving any trace of a ramp? The archaeological record is silent, a void that challenges our reconstructions. This empirical, dirt under the fingernails approach grounds our exploration in fact, yet it often reveals that our modern assumptions are the very things holding us back from understanding their ancient genius. It is this stubborn gap between the evidence we have and the feats they achieved that drives the next phase of discovery, where theory is put to the ultimate test by modern hands trying to rebuild the past. A modern team of archaeologists and engineers stands before a 40-ton block of limestone, armed with nothing but ropes, logs, and sheer determination. Their goal is simple: to recreate the movement of a single pyramid stone using only methods available 4,500 years ago. The experiment begins with confidence, but the reality is humbling. The ropes stretch and fray under the immense strain. The wooden rollers placed beneath the sledge splinter and crack under pressure that feels absolute. What looks simple in theory becomes a grueling, inch-by-inch battle against friction and gravity. One researcher, her hands raw from pulling, later remarked that the experience transformed her view of the ancient builders. "We thought we understood the physics," she said. "We had the diagrams and the calculations, but we lacked the generations of tactile knowledge, the instinct for how the wood would behave, or the exact way to coordinate 200 people pulling at once without the ropes tangling." This was not brute force, it was a high-stakes ballet, and we were clumsy amateurs. On Easter Island, another team attempted to walk a concrete replica of a Moai statue. Using 3 teams with ropes to rock the statue forward, they succeeded in moving it several hundred meters, yet the process was nerve-wracking. A single misstep in the rhythmic pulling could have sent the multi-ton figure crashing to the ground, shattering it and endangering the crew. The modern participants spoke of a profound respect for the original engineers, who performed this dance not with concrete replicas, but with irreplaceable sacred icons, and who did it not as an experiment, but as a matter of cultural necessity. These replication projects reveal a critical gap. We can understand the mechanics, but we have lost the nuance, the exact type of wood for the sledges, the perfect consistency of the lubricating mud, the specific chants or calls used to synchronize the workforce. These are the intangible elements that made the difference between a successful lift and a catastrophic failure. When science struggles to match the past, even with all our hindsight, it forces a startling question. What subtle, unwritten mastery of materials and coordination has been lost to time? This intangible mastery is the ultimate ghost in the machine of ancient engineering. We can reconstruct the ramps and the ropes, but how do we rediscover a lost instinct for the materials? The true methods may have depended on knowledge that was never written down, passed through generations of master builders in a living, breathing tradition that died with its last practitioners. Think of the guilds and secret societies that guarded their craft's deepest secrets. These were not just trade unions, but repositories of hard-won wisdom. A master stonemason would teach his apprentice not just how to strike a chisel, but precisely where to strike it on a specific type of granite, using a specific tone of the hammer to listen for the fracture forming. This was tactile, sensory knowledge, the recipe for Roman concrete, a material that hardens underwater and endures for millennia, was a celebrated example of such a loss. Its secret, involving a specific volcanic ash and a meticulous mixing process, vanished after the empire's fall. Modern scientists only recently rediscovered its formula after decades of research, a stark reminder of how entire libraries of technical innovation can simply fade from memory. This loss extends beyond simple recipes. It includes the esoteric practices, the ceremonial chants that may have served as precise timing mechanisms for coordinating a massive pull, or the use of specific plant-based solutions to temporarily soften stone, a persistent legend among many indigenous cultures. When a tradition based on oral transmission and hands-on apprenticeship is broken, that knowledge can disappear in a single generation. This profound gap lends a new urgency to the work of preservationists and researchers today. They are not just saving stones, they are racing to decode the last echoes of a forgotten wisdom. It forces us to ask, if we have lost the very skills that built our most enduring landmarks, what does that say about the fragility of our own collective knowledge? This contemplation of loss naturally directs our gaze back to the monuments themselves, to the one undeniable fact that has guided this entire journey. They are still here. Their true genius is not just in how they were built, but in how they have stood for thousands of years. This longevity is not an accident, but the direct result of engineering choices that anticipated the relentless forces of nature. Take the Pantheon in Rome, its massive unreinforced concrete dome, still the largest of its kind in the world after nearly 2,000 years. The secret to its survival lies in its design. The dome grows thinner and its concrete mix changes, becoming lighter with pumice aggregate at the top, reducing the overall weight and stress on the walls below. This is a masterclass in load management, an ancient understanding of structural mechanics that prevented collapse. Across the globe, the builders of Machu Picchu engineered for a different kind of challenge: seismic activity. Their polygonal, interlocking stones form walls that dance during an earthquake. Instead of cracking, the stones shift and settle, then return to their original position once the shaking stops. This brilliant flexibility has kept these walls standing through countless tremors that have toppled modern construction. Material scientists who analyze these ancient stones express a deep respect for their composition. They point out that the specific types of granite and limestone chosen were not just readily available. They were selected for their dense crystalline structure and natural resistance to weathering. This was a profound, localized knowledge of geology. Furthermore, many sites feature sophisticated, hidden drainage systems. At the base of the Great Pyramid, channels were carved to divert rainwater, preventing erosion at the foundation that could have destabilized the entire structure over centuries. This was foresight on a millennial scale. They were not just building for their own time, they were building for a future they would never see. This inherent durability is a testament to a holistic philosophy, where every element, from the grandest alignment to the smallest drain, worked in concert to defy time itself. The silent endurance of these places forces a humbling comparison with our own modern world, where many structures are designed with a lifespan of mere decades. It compels us to look beyond the stone and mortar to consider the deeper, perhaps more fragile, human wisdom that made such permanence possible. These silent stone giants were never just feats of engineering, they were the beating heart of their cultures. Their true purpose was woven from spiritual belief, social order, and political power, transforming raw stone into symbols that unified entire civilizations. Consider Stonehenge on the windswept Salisbury Plain. For centuries, it was likely a center for rituals and celestial observations, a place where communities gathered to mark the solstices and connect with the cycles of nature. The immense effort to transport its blue stones from mountains over 150 miles away was not a technical exercise. It was a pilgrimage of faith, a physical manifestation of a shared spiritual journey. In Egypt, the pyramids were far more than royal tombs. They were instruments of resurrection for the pharaoh and, by extension, for the entire kingdom. The pharaoh was a god-king, and his eternal stability guaranteed the continued order of the cosmos and the annual flooding of the Nile. As one historian notes, the pyramid was a machine for the afterlife, but it was also the ultimate symbol of the state's power and organizational capacity, a declaration in limestone and granite that this civilization was built to last for eternity. This multidimensional purpose infused the back-breaking labor with profound meaning. The farmer who pulled a rope to drag a stone for a pyramid was not just building a structure, he was participating in a sacred act that secured the future of his community and his place in the cosmic order. The engineering itself served these grander cultural goals. The perfect alignment of a temple with a solstice sunrise was not merely an astronomical achievement. It was a way to make the divine tangible, to demonstrate that the ruler or the priesthood could command the very heavens. The intimidating, seamless walls of a fortress like Mycenae were not just defensive, they were psychological tools, projecting an image of invincibility and authority to all who approached. Understanding this rich tapestry of significance is what finally answers the question of why. Why would a society dedicate generations of labor and vast resources to such an immense project? It was because these monuments were the very fabric of their identity, their religion, and their power, all solidified into a single, enduring form. The stones captivate us not just because they are heavy, but because they are heavy with meaning, a meaning that continues to resonate across the millennia and deepens the mystery of the hands that shaped them. Even with our most advanced theories, some ancient sites present riddles that stubbornly refuse to be solved. The platform at Baalbek in Lebanon is one of the most profound examples. Here, 3 colossal stones known as the trilithon form a foundation wall, each block estimated to weigh over 800 tons. That is heavier than 2 fully loaded passenger jets. The quarry lies under a mile away, with a slight but significant incline between it and the temple site. Modern engineers are blunt about the challenge. Moving a single one of these blocks with our current technology would require the largest cranes in the world, and even then, it would be a delicate, high-risk operation. How a civilization without such machinery transported and then lifted these behemoths into place, fitting them together with hairline precision, remains one of archaeology's greatest open questions. Researchers openly admit that our best proposed methods, involving enormous ramps and thousands of laborers, strain the limits of logistical plausibility. The sheer scale of the operation seems to defy the known capabilities of the time. Across the sea in France, the sprawling alignments of Karnak present a different kind of mystery. Thousands of standing stones stretch for miles in eerily straight lines. The conventional explanation suggests they formed a sacred landscape for rituals or processions. Yet, some astronomers point out that the lines also correspond to precise lunar and solar alignments, tracking the moon's complex 18.6-year cycle with uncanny accuracy. Was this a colossal astronomical observatory built from granite, a computer of stone designed to predict celestial events? Or was it something else entirely, a purpose we have not yet begun to fathom? The stones offer no written manual, only silent, imposing clues. These enduring enigmas are not failures of science, but reminders that our understanding of the past is still evolving. They represent the edges of our knowledge, the blank spaces on the map that continue to invite exploration and debate. This lingering sense of wonder, this confrontation with the unexplained, does more than just puzzle historians. It quietly challenges the very foundations of modern engineering, forcing us to reconsider what we believe is possible. Our modern world, built on steel and concrete, could learn a profound lesson from these stone sentinels of the past. The ancient approach was not about conquering nature, but about collaborating with it. They used local materials not just for convenience, but because they understood the unique properties of the stone from their own region. This drastically reduced the energy needed for transport and created structures that were chemically and physically attuned to their environment. A principle modern sustainable design is only now rediscovering. Today, architects look at the self-cooling properties of termite mounds to design buildings that regulate temperature without massive air conditioning systems. This practice, known as biomimicry, finds its roots in ancient observation. The builders of the past were master biomimics, studying the stability of mountain slopes and the strength of natural arches to inform their own timeless creations. They also mastered passive solar alignment centuries before the term existed. Just as the ancients oriented their structures to capture the sun's warmth in winter and provide shade in summer, contemporary green buildings are designed with precise window placements and thermal mass to minimize their reliance on artificial heating and cooling. This is not outdated knowledge, it is a timeless wisdom. The real inspiration for today's engineers lies in this shift in perspective. We are often taught to solve problems with more power, more complex systems, and new materials. The ancient builders teach us to look for solutions in simplicity, in the inherent intelligence of the natural world, and in designing for permanence rather than planned obsolescence. Their legacy challenges us to build not just for the next quarterly report, but for the next 1,000 years. This forward-looking vision, where the past and future converge, raises a final, compelling thought. If we were to apply this ancient, sustainable wisdom on a global scale today, what kind of world could we build for the generations to come? The environment was not an obstacle for these builders, it was a blueprint. They possessed an innate understanding of their local climate, leveraging its rhythms and resources to achieve what would otherwise be impossible. Seasonal weather patterns became a critical tool in their engineering arsenal. In ancient Egypt, the annual flooding of the Nile was not a disaster to be mitigated, but a delivery system to be harnessed. As the floodwaters rose, they created a network of temporary canals, allowing barges laden with stone to float right to the construction site, turning a logistical nightmare into an elegant, cyclical operation. They worked with the seasons, not against them. This deep environmental awareness extended to the very stone they selected. In the scorching deserts of the Middle East, builders often chose light-colored limestone for its high albedo, reflecting the sun's intense rays and helping to keep interior spaces cooler. Conversely, in colder climates, denser, darker stones were selected for their ability to absorb and slowly release solar heat, creating a more stable thermal environment within. This was not guesswork, it was applied material science, a profound knowledge of how different rocks interact with sun, wind, and water. A stunning example of this holistic engineering can be found in the American Southwest at the cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde. Here, the ancestral pueblones built entire cities into the sheltered alcoves of canyon walls. The massive rock overhangs provided natural protection from summer sun and winter snow, while the south-facing orientation captured the low-angled winter sunlight for warmth. The construction itself used local sandstone and adobe, materials with excellent thermal mass that helped regulate temperature, keeping the dwellings cool in summer and warm in winter. Environmental scientists who study these sites point to their incredible efficiency, noting that they achieved a state of near-perfect harmony with their ecosystem, requiring minimal external energy input. This ancient awareness of nature underscores a holistic approach to engineering that we often overlook today, where the goal was not just to build a structure, but to seamlessly integrate it into a living system. This profound connection between the built environment and the natural world inevitably leads us to a more reflective question about our own role. How do we, as modern observers, approach these sacred landscapes today without imposing our own values upon them? The desire to unlock these ancient secrets carries a profound responsibility, one that weighs heavily on modern archaeologists and researchers. Every decision to excavate, to touch a stone that has lain untouched for millennia, is a choice between knowledge and preservation. In the rush to answer our questions, we have sometimes caused irreversible harm. In the early 20th century, for example, excavations at some sites used methods now considered crude and destructive, dynamiting through layers of history to reach what was deemed important, forever scattering the context that held the true story. Today, the field has shifted dramatically toward a principle of minimal intervention. Ground-penetrating radar and LiDAR scans now allow us to peer beneath the soil without ever turning a shovel, mapping buried walls and pathways with incredible detail from the air. These non-invasive technologies are the new standard, preserving the integrity of the site for future generations who will have even better tools at their disposal. Yet the greatest ethical shift involves not just how we study these places, but who guides the work. For decades, archaeology was often an outside enterprise, with international teams arriving, extracting artifacts and data, and departing. Now, there is a growing and essential movement to involve local and indigenous communities as central partners. These sites are not just global wonders, they are ancestral homes, active spiritual centers, and sources of cultural identity. When the descendants of the original builders are part of the research process, they contribute invaluable knowledge, oral histories, and a deep understanding of the land's meaning that no outside expert could ever possess. This collaborative model transforms archaeology from an extraction into a conversation, ensuring that the cultural heritage is protected and interpreted with the respect it deserves. The future of these monuments depends on this balanced stewardship, a shared guardianship that honors both the pursuit of knowledge and the sanctity of the legacy left in stone. Our tools for seeing the past are growing sharper every day. The next wave of discovery may not come from a shovel, but from sensors that peer directly through the earth and stone. Light detection and ranging, or LiDAR, is revolutionizing our view of ancient landscapes. Mounted on aircraft, it fires millions of laser pulses to map the ground surface, digitally stripping away dense jungle canopy to reveal the ghostly outlines of entire cities we never knew existed. In Cambodia, this technology exposed a vast urban network around Angkor Wat, while in Central America, it is sketching out the true scale of Mayan civilization. Ground-penetrating radar works like an X-ray for the soil, sending radio waves downward and reading the echoes to pinpoint buried walls, chambers, and even ancient pathways. These non-invasive eyes allow us to survey immense areas without disturbing a single blade of grass, preserving the sites for future generations while unlocking their secrets. Beyond mapping, artificial intelligence is being trained to analyze this flood of new data, searching for subtle patterns in stone placement or soil composition that a human researcher might miss. An expert in archaeological technology recently shared his excitement, stating, "We are on the cusp of a new era. We are no longer just digging in the dirt, we are mining data, and these monuments are the ultimate database." Ongoing projects are already applying these tools to the world's greatest enigmas. New surveys of the Giza Plateau using muon tomography, a technique that uses cosmic rays to see through rock, are searching for hidden voids within the Great Pyramid that have eluded us for centuries. In the Peruvian highlands, drones equipped with multispectral cameras are mapping the Nazca lines from new angles, revealing previously unknown geoglyphs. Each of these projects is driven by a simple, powerful hope that the next scan, the next data set, will finally reveal a lost chamber, a forgotten blueprint, or a construction yard that explains how these stones were moved. This forward momentum ensures the story of megalithic engineering is far from over. It is a living narrative, continuously rewritten by the very technology it inspires, promising that the next great revelation about our ancient past is always just one discovery